Hello, my name is Lars Klüver. I'm director of the Danish Board of Technology. Uh, Let me first thank you for being invited to make this little presentation for the HICSS workshop on the integrative development of sustainable systems. The Danish Board of Technology, where I come from, is a former parliamentary technology assessment institution. We are now a foundation. We have our main competences in running research and policy advice with use of interactive, involving participatory processes, uh, involving stakeholders, experts, politicians, citizens, whoever are necessary to take up a certain topic. And I will give you a case example in city climate adaptation, uh, which exemplifies this approach to integrated research and development. My presentation has been made together with Me Thompson, a project manager at the Danish Board of Technology, who has been a key person in the case project I will present. First, a little background about coast cities and the rising sea level, which this process was named. Denmark is a country with over 7,000 kilometer coastline. We have 98 municipalities. 76 of them are coast municipalities with several towns and cities at the coast. If we look at the IPCC scenarios, we will have sea levels rise of 30 to 200 centimeters until the next century turn. All climate adaptation until now have mainly been focused on hyperrain, cloud bursts. Now there's a shift towards storm surges because we expect to have many more floods coming from water from both inland and from the coast in the future. And we have many cities that are dangerous by that. So the reason we took up this project about cities and coast is that it's both elements in this are variables. Cities are variables. They will change over time. The functions will change. The life in them, the activities in them. This is dynamic. Weather as well is dynamic. It will change. Climate will change. So it's vital now to begin to think of the development of our cities in a climate perspective. So what we wanted to do was to make visions that matched how we will want to live in our cities, to use them, and how we at the same time can make them resilient to climate. Just to give you a little idea of why this is relevant in a Danish context, this is little Denmark. This is even more little Denmark, smaller Denmark, at a I think I'm not quite sure I remember, but I think it's a 20 years incident with 1 meters sea level rise in Denmark. So this we're talking about serious business here. The little map in the corner is on the west side of the right island, Sealand, where we have a lot of industry. The industry get their water from the freshwater, yellow freshwater lake, and it will be each 20 years it will be covered by salt water in these incidents. So salt water in industry equipment is not exactly the best thing in the world. So just one example of which kind of problems Denmark are up against. The project was led by us, ran until last year. It was part of a larger project with 4 elements paid by the Danish foundation Realdania. And the whole thing was to initiate debate about the future of coastal cities in Denmark, create a knowledge base, and also connect this development of visions with climate adaptation. So where should our cities go? What do we know about it? What should we know about it? And how can we begin to discuss where they should go? We made use of what we call participatory technology assessment methods. it is basically the idea that stakeholders, citizens, experts, and politicians can be brought together, and we have more than 30 years experience that when they are brought together, they very constructively work together. And we would want to bring them together with these problems related to cities and future climate adaptation. Yes, the process as such had several elements: scenario workshops, local politician workshops, expert workshops, and a citizen summit. So this is what happened in our part of the project. To the right, you see the whole project that had a Hvidovre in Danish, a knowledge track, a dialogue track, and a communication track. And this project that I am talking about is the center. That's the dialogue track, where we had input to scenarios, engagement of stakeholders. We had citizen summits and so on. Yes. The three scenarios that were made, three scenarios. They cover the years from 2050 and onwards, 40 years. So we're talking about 2090 as an endpoint for the development. There were three scenarios. The first one here called Strandby, that's beach town in Danish. We want to keep the water out. We make dikes and whatever we can find out to keep the water back. That's one scenario. This is Fjordby, fjord town. We invite the water in. We develop our town so it can live with having the water in now and then. Make it an element in the town. The last one is Næsby. I would probably peninsula town or something like that. We retreat. We just move up the hill as the water comes in. So these are the three scenarios that were developed with stakeholders, with experts, and these scenarios were then brought together with a lot of policy questions to citizens, to a citizen summit. A citizen summit is 100 persons meeting of one day, split up in 1 hour sessions that are thematic. During those 1 hour, the citizens discuss at tables of 7, 8, 9 persons, and after that they vote on a number of predefined questions. And these themes that were discussed were about strategies, where to go, why, what to aim at, who should do what, roles and responsibility, where should the money come from to make these change, all this adaptation, and which risks are we willing to take? Should we really cover ourselves 110%, or could we live with a little problem now and then and cover ourselves 90%? So these kind of discussions were triggered among the citizens. Also, there were some feedback and policy events. There was a workshop with youth at a people's high school in Denmark called Hvidovre Højskole. There was a parliamentary hearing at the Danish parliament, and also there was a policy panel, politician panel at the parliament that followed the project, and we had discussions with them. The project also resulted in what we call a local toolbox with the scenarios, with dialogue methods, local guidelines, and recommendations for all levels, national, regional, and local level. Concrete solutions were suggested, for example. This was given to the local, but also there were follow-up activities. And there I would show you two approaches to these. One is basically, for example, a municipality or a coast town process that resembles the one I've just described to you, where we have stakeholder interviews, we pre-develop the scenarios based on stakeholder interviews. Then we have a scenario workshop with all stakeholders, citizens, politicians, experts involved, and they adjust this scenario. And then we have the citizen summit in the end, where citizens, 100+ citizens from the local area, meet and discuss a whole day and give input to their value judgments of where this should go. The other is a much more delicate and hard-working plan, you could say. called the DAPP methodology. Basically, it runs through a very detailed and very fine-grained process from expectation management in the beginning over description of the whole system we have to adapt, very detailed descriptions, making an idea catalog and a vision, make a definition of how these activities could be done well enough, not as good as possible, but well enough. Make dynamic planning maps. Sorry, a multi-criteria analysis of what survives all these processes, and at the end, an action plan. So this is basically the process, the case that I wanted to show you to give you an idea of how it's actually possible to put very difficult, complex issues of future development that will have influence on everybody's life in the area, put them into very constructive processes, and actually get something out of it that can be used policy-wise. To say that this is a trajectory which points at this, although I know that policy trajectories are not a straight arrow. They are sometimes chaotic, diffuse. The different phases are mixed up among each other. But anyways, all policies start with a vision. At some point, a decision is taken. At some point, we begin to discuss that decision and maybe evaluate it and start all over again and start new policy processes. So there are phases we can see. So if we look at a policy process like starting with vision, then option, then having hearing option productions, then having hearing processes to get feedback from all the involved actors. Then a decision is made, we begin to implement. We know from all this, from this policy process, that we have participatory processes that can cover all phases. So vision, options, hearing, decision-making, implementation, evaluations, citizen stakeholders, experts, politicians themselves can participate in good collaboration with the right methods in all of these areas. But the interesting thing when we talk about very complex processes, we cannot escape the fact that there's also something called research and knowledge creation. So if we put up just a simplified line of different phases of development towards being able to implement things, starting maybe with basic research, put into a roadmap, you could say. We could call that strategic research. Applied research, where we begin to touch on putting it down, making it done somewhere, or that it should be able to be transformed into something that could be useful in daily life. And then innovation, and finally consultation and engineering, where these innovations and applied research outcomes are really used concretely. The point here is that for both of these two trajectories, they simply have to be integrated and coupled if we're going to solve all the different kinds of complex challenges we have. Not only climate adaptation and climate mitigation. We're talking about biodiversity, health all over the globe, fresh water enough for everybody, whatever. All of these things, we have to couple the two things. We have to be better coupling between policy development and knowledge creation. And the interesting thing is that my postulate is that participatory, inclusive, and dialogical approaches are exactly what can glue the knowledge and the policy trajectories together. It's quite interesting because we can take experts, put them together with politicians, with citizens, stakeholders. We can have very good discussions in all these elements. The only thing that demands is that the research trajectory does not just go on until we at the end of it, and then it says, we're ready, you just have to do what we're saying. The interesting thing is that the glue has to be made in all different phases, at least from strategic research and onwards. So also there we have to have these dialogical processes so that the knowledge creation is actually being made relevant for what will have to be used in the policy creation. The good message is that the methods are there. I think we're very good now at developing inclusive and dialogical methods. So they are there, or they can be made, they can be coupled for different processes. There is a need, especially in the research, but also in the policy area, there's a need for method literacy in this area. So capacity building and so on. But as said, the methods are there, so it's actually a matter of beginning to put them into the project design and research. Then these couplings can begin to be done. But so the problem actually is for me that the research and public policies to make use of these methods, that's not there yet. And that's really what we have to fight for if we want to make sustainable, integrated research for sustainable development. I think that's so important, and that's my main message for you today. So thank you very much. Looking forward to discussions on the 7th in the evening. Bye-bye.